students do you have at your university?
So the university is large. We have across 5 campuses in the nation.
Wow.
Our largest is Medellin. We have about 27,000 students, including about 4,000 in Colegio, which is kindergarten through 11th grade, which is the end of the primary system here. And the university, our undergraduate program, has approximately 480 students just in the game program. It's the largest part of the engineering school for the first time. It used to be aeronautics. Our aeronautic engineering program is very well respected. But now it's games. And within games, we have 3 career paths, one being video games, programming and design, animation, which is a separate, and then experiences, interactivas. So think museum exhibits and other ways to engage people using interactive technology, but not within the confines of a game design. And that's the smallest of the 3 groups. Animation is the largest.
Sorry, have you noticed any particular differences or specialties in the young people who are engaging with games in Colombia and where you teach versus, for example, in the States or some other places that you've been?
Well, I think that, so by comparison, I came from California. California is officially 46 million people. And within the state of California, we have 308, was the last count, undergraduate degree granting universities. Colombia, with 50 million people, has 100. So the levels of investment in education in Colombia are much lower than other more developed nations in the world. And that becomes, a barrier or a challenge. And I think that my students typically have less technology experience and less exposure to technology, the math foundations necessary to learn higher levels of programming. So I would say our undergraduate program does a really good job of trying to bring this group of students up to date as fast as possible. And the other thing that I will contrast is the levels of compromiso, commitment. Our students, my best students now understand that they should not, they get no pass because they're from Colombia, that the rest of the world is motivated to learn and they invest the time necessary to make games and fail, right? Because the game making process is all about how many times can you fail before you succeed within the time and budget that your client has
without
presented
going
you.
Broke, basically.
For me, it's just personally fascinating that there is no film industry in the same way that we have in other countries with, the size of a country like Colombia. There are no art universities here. We have no film academy of Baden-Württemberg. Those people are close friends. If you want to study art as a young Colombian, you hopefully will find a way to get to Europe or to the United States and go to an art school, which is what my friend Diego Angel did. He lied on his, at the old-fashioned paper birth certificates, etc., to change his age to get a visa and apply for a university to go to the Art Center in Chicago to study art. Because there are no universities here. It's one of the reasons why our animation program is very popular, because people with artistic talent and interest, this is one of the few places you can formally learn about anatomy, movement, things that are the foundations of art for the last few thousand years. So that's an important thing.
Joseph, talking about communities, I would like to ask you or to hear your opinion on our last topic. And I would like to compare the Colombian games industry and the US games industry, which is, I guess, really hard, but I can't imagine anyone better than you who could try to compare those to each other.
Thanks for the easy question.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome.
I think we're at this stage, I'll call it, early adolescence as a Colombian game culture. I mean, Carlos is in the second wave of game makers. You know, the most experienced teams are based in Bogota. You know, we have probably 50 plus professional teams that are working in Colombia at the moment. The majority of them are doing work for hire or sponsored small games for other clients. A few of them, the most established studios are now doing their own original IP, and you know, that's pretty good. The studios that I'm involved with here in Medellin are, you know, we're sort of like walking that line between learning how to get experience by doing contract work for bigger studios, and at the same time finding a voice. And I think that most people in the world don't really care if we make a Narcos game, which typically is what people associate with Colombian culture, sadly. At the same time, I don't think that anyone's going to care about games about indigenous, the indigenous tribes and artists from 2,000 years ago. So I think that the challenge for young Colombians is in finding your voice as an artist, as a communicator, as to what you think is important and what you think will be fun or engaging. And I think, you know, you look at the successful studios, other successful studios in South America, Martin Cow and Andrzej Ciskowski from NGD, you know, who did the reboot of Masters of Orion, and you know, they're a great shop. And you know, I hope that some of our teams here will continue to be successful. I think as the market expands, there'll be more opportunities. As I'm sure that our colleague from Pro Colombia talked about earlier, you know, we have some very specific advantages in terms of an educated population sufficient to be able to build games, but with a cost infrastructure that rivals, you know, the Far East. But we have cultural affinities that escape the rest of the world. We said we have the same heritage. Our forefathers come from the same parts of Europe. When you describe how a bird should look aesthetically, our artists here understand that in the same way that and typically an Asian artist will not. We have, you know, being able to work within an hour and a half, 2-hour time zone makes things much easier, so that problems, when they do happen, can be resolved efficiently. There's just more natural back and forth dialogue within the rhythms of work days. So I think that those things are going to, you know, give us an advantage. I think that, you know, we have the teams that are successful because they have talent, they have passion, and a high level of commitment to being successful. And I think that's true across teams across the world, not just in Colombia. But right now we have a generational advantage of a man-month rate that is very cost competitive. So, you know, for anyone listening, you know, if you haven't heard this from our other panelists tonight, you know, come to Colombia or give one of us a call, and we can put you in touch with some very talented young studios that, you know, can build prototypes, build out levels, do art, you know, and at a rate that you would be surprised. So if you're looking to experiment, this becomes a very efficient way to do business. This is one of the challenges. We have an annual event sponsored by the Colombian government, basically the Ministry of Technology and Pro Export, Pro Colombia, called Colombia 4.0. And like most developing game economies, we've spent a lot of time and a lot of government money bringing people from around the world, you know, leading names, to come and talk about the game industry. And, you know, it's very inspiring. Nolan Bushnell is entertaining and inspiring. When Adam Boyes came, when he was still at Sony, you know, it's inspiring. We've had a number of people. I don't think this generation of young Colombians needs any more inspiration. They need a little more instruction. They'd like to go from level 2 to level 10. And I think that, that means bringing in people who aren't famous names. It means bringing in a lead animator from a studio in Barcelona to help teach people how to compress their shaders so that their pipeline works better, because that will lead to a better game experience. And I think that, these are the next steps that here in Colombia we can take to advance the craft of game making and to accelerate the learning processes that, will make young Colombians, give them the ability to compete. So this is, Colombia, I think it's an interesting intersection of changes here in South America. And I think that, having spoken to our colleagues in Brazil who, have one series of challenges, our challenges here are similar in terms of education. And that we need more educated people and more people willing to commit the time it takes to learn. But at the same time, we're pretty stable here. The government is reasonably supportive. Could they do more? Yes, but they are at least trying and doing something, which is more than what the U.S. governments typically do. The exceptions being maybe regional areas like, the Department of Economic Growth in Louisiana and New Orleans for, game studios that are moving there, etc. Similar to what's going on in Canada between Montreal and Vancouver. But we have inexpensive labor, so that's never going to, for my lifetime, that will not be an issue. So again, come to Colombia. You'll find a very vibrant culture, and it's one of the places that I think everyone should come to, because the history is rich. It's beautiful to see, and it would be a good place to vacation outside of quarantine in the same way that most places will be. And from a gamer's perspective, you will find a group of young adults who are as passionate about the things that make games entertaining and fun, similar to any place else in the world.